Welcome back. I am so happy to have you with me this week for a terrific conversation. I am so excited to dig in and talk with Joe Bakhmutsky. I'm so sorry. It's such a
Perfect.
terrific
That
name.
was
I
awesome,
love it.
Susie. Yeah.
Oh, you're kind. We're going to have fun. Joe is a celebrated speaker, author, and coach who is using his lived experience with cancer and mental health struggles to share inspiration and advice on how to thrive despite the setbacks and challenges you might be facing today. He is also the host of his own podcast, running for 2 years now. So it's always nice to share a conversation with a fellow podcast host. We will have the link to his show in the show notes, as well as ways that you can be in touch, because I know you're going to want to continue the conversation after you get to know Joe a little bit better. Thank you for making some time in your morning, my afternoon on the other side of the globe.
Oh, thanks, Susie. Thanks so much for having me. And thank you for the kind words. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. I'm so glad that we are connected because I love to share stories of people who have come through difficult experiences and have the insight, have the aha moment, just give themselves permission to put their happiness and well-being first, and especially those who are bringing that message out to the world. So thanks for being a part of the conversation here.
Thanks so much, Susie. I really appreciate it, and I think what you're doing is so vital. It's just helping all of us. This is something that we all need right now. Is finding more ways of dealing with stress, with the craziness of daily life, right?
Yes. Yeah, it gets pretty crazy. And then we add in some of these other life events. So I'd love to know a little bit more about your story, a little bit more about your life before cancer, and then how it moved and inspired you to start sharing this message.
Yeah. Thank you, Susie. Yeah, absolutely. So I was actually at the best point of my life before cancer, and I just fell in love and married with the woman I've always wanted to meet without knowing it. Like I said, we got married. We had a baby. My career was just shooting up. I was just all of a sudden, like, it was, everything just came together. It was so perfect until really, like one night I was just in the shower and I was just getting myself clean, and that's when my hand reached down and I felt this lump. I felt this hard lump on my testicle, and just this cold shiver went right through me, Susie, because in that moment I realized that something is wrong, and it kind of clicked in for me why for weeks like I felt like my underwear shrunk 3 sizes, and it was awful. Like it's all fell into place for me. And so, the next day I ran to the doctors and I was sent off for all sorts of tests, and really things happened quite quickly from there. I had an operation. I've had chemo, and I was the chemo was there was like a 9 weeks in hospital. So it was a lot of things happened, and it was a completely life-changing experience that happened in a blink of a moment, where with just one moment, like, life was perfect, and then just everything changed.
Well, I'm so grateful that you had that opportunity, that a presence of mind to be really reveling in how wonderful life was going for you. It does make it, I think, even more jarring when suddenly you're pulled out of it. And then to, I'm sure, I would guess, be dropped into treatment so quickly, it's hard to tie up loose ends, to take that time. Suddenly you're going to be away from work. So were you staying in hospital while you were undergoing your whole chemotherapy treatment?
Well, I was staying there for parts of it. Parts of it, I was able to come home and go in to the hospital to get to get treatment. So it was kind of a mixed bag, but all in all, it was a couple of months where life really flipped on its head. And I think this is one of those. Uh, what you described as life events, right? Where something happens and when you totally don't expect it, and it completely changes all of your plans for the future. It completely changes even your some instances your body, how you think about yourself, how you look at the world, and it forces you to kind of adjust and figure out a new way forward, and kind of a new way of thinking about yourself, and ultimately what do you want to do with yourself, right? Because that also changes, I think, when we go through experiences in life, right?
Yes. And I would dare say a lot of people over this last year have really come to take a closer look at if they're doing what they want to be doing with their life, right? These really dramatic experiences kind of make us stand still for a minute and ask the big questions. Are we really happy with where we are, with where we think we're going from here? It's unfortunate that it takes a big crisis often to make us really take a deep look at that, but it definitely does. And it shifts your priorities, I'm sure. Did you find yourself putting more priority on things that you thought previously you could wait until later and come back to?
That's exactly right, Susie. It's funny how, yeah, it's exactly as you say. It's funny how sometimes we get so lost in just kind of, you know, reality of daily life, right? Because we are all so busy, right? There's always just so much that is going on, and you're doing all of those things, and sometimes you kind of forget to ask yourself, I mean, is this really what I want? Am I really kind of going in the right direction here? Um, you know, and I guess that's the reality of, you know, of what we're experiencing. And this is, of course, the reality where I, you know, I was asking myself, is my life, am I doing the right things? Am I in the right place myself? And I think when we are confronted with these big changes, when we're confronted with situations where we have to decide, you know, what's next, or, you know, it almost forces us to kind of rethink, you know, like, am I in a good place? And in a way to take back control. Because when things happen, you know, whether this be a pandemic or whether this be difficult personal circumstances, whether, you know, whether it's a health issue, or whether this is you know, whether this is a personal crisis, or whether this is some kind of financial difficulty, we get into a situation where we a place of like uncertainty, right? You don't know what's going on, and you feel like things are just happening to you, right? You feel like all of these things are just coming at you, right? And you're trying to kind of go, like, what do I do now? And you're kind of trying to adjust, and you're kind of trying to get your bearings. And I think the key thing is, you know, before even deciding on what it is that you want and what's right, is to try to get some semblance of control back into your life and figure out, you know, like, really, to me, it comes down to separating what you can control from what you cannot control. And then, like, for example, with cancer, right? With cancer, I knew that I had no control over like how the cancer is going to spread. I had no control over whether the treatment would work. But you know what? I thought, well, what I do have control over, I can understand what are the treatment options. I can at least ask questions. I can get myself to a place where I understand enough about what it is that I can do. I can understand. I can kind of bring my family, you know, and friends to kind of let them know what's going on, and help them to kind of be there for me on my terms. You know, which was a big thing. So I think that kind of taking back control and figuring out what is it that you can do, I think that's a critical first step when you're in a difficult spot.
Oh, I think that's such a powerful perspective. And a lot of people, in my experience, get really caught up in laboring over the things that they don't have any control over. Really sad, really pessimistic, losing hope because of everything that's outside of their control, and forgetting how much is within our control and really maximizing that. So I appreciate your illuminating that. I think that's really helpful for people to, even in the most dire situations, start to separate, right? And not put our energy into the things that we can't change, but really put our attention and efforts into what we can maximize or improve or ask for help. I like too that you talked about telling your friends and family how you needed them to show up for you.
Exactly, Susie. And in a way, I feel also like I just want to touch on what you said earlier, which is exactly right. That like separating what you can and cannot control, and sometimes that's easier said than done. But what I think in this case is particularly helpful is if you actually just throw all of yourself, all of your energy, all of your kind of presence, all of your time into things that you can control, and that will naturally lead you away from the things that you cannot control, things like worry, things like craziness. I'm not saying they're going to completely eradicate it. That's not possible, but it will, at least it will kind of put it into the background, which I think is a big deal. And I don't think I was also entirely truthful with you when I said that, I kind of let people know how they can support me. That was a journey, and I certainly made mistakes. I wish, Susie, I was like in the place where I was telling people exactly what to do, and I wish they'd given me exactly the support that I wanted. That wasn't really the case. I think I've learned to do that. I mean, even with the family. No, I remember this moment, Susie, when just before I was gonna start my chemo. I knew that I was gonna be in hospital. For a long time. I knew that the hospital was far away. I wouldn't be able to see the family as like my wife was working, and like our son was in daycare. I knew I wouldn't be able to see them for a little while, and so I wanted to spend some time with my son, and he was 2 at the time, and so I took him to our favorite park, and we spent this magical day. We just had this so much fun. We were like chasing the seagulls, and we were like played with his toys, and we were like on the swings, and like playing with the toy cars, and they had the picnic, like all of this great stuff. And we had just this magical day. And when we were going home, I thought, like, what can I tell like this, my 2-year-old about like my cancer? Like, I don't want to scare him. I don't want to put him off. So I ended up not really saying anything at all. Like, we just said, oh, well, I'm just going to the hospital. The doctors are going to look after me. And we would like just talk on Skype, right? That's what we had back then. So, and I noticed that when I was in the hospital and we would talk on Skype, and we tried to have a normal conversation. There was me on one end, and kind of my wife and my kid on the other end. And I noticed that like this kind of pain of not understanding what's going on, like as if us adults were like keeping secrets from him, right? Because he could feel that something was off, but he didn't know what it was. And when I saw that pain in his eyes of just not knowing what's going on, I realized that by wanting to really shield and protect my son from this experience that I have with cancer, instead, I excluded him. And that's when I knew that things had to change. And this is when we talked about it. We talked about how to have these conversations with him. And this is how we ended up, bringing up cancer, telling him about how it is. And I was surprised that he took it well, because he knew what was going on. We were like just kind of upfront and direct. And in a weird way, I think that this really came out for me is when the time came for his 3rd birthday, right? We had this, we had the plan for his big party and everything. And of course, that didn't happen. But we decided to have his kind of birthday party in my oncology ward. They had the separate room there for us, and it was a lot of fun. Like my wife brought the presents, my mom brought the cake. We had oncology nurses come and sing happy birthday. And it was just this. It was a lot of fun. And when we were there, and I was there, just plugged into my drip. And when I saw like just my son, hugging his like this huge Hulk toy that he had, when I saw that, I thought, well, that was the moment when this whole cancer thing became normal. And that's what I think is the crucial realization, that when we make our struggle, when we make our challenge, when we make it, instead of kind of wanting to put it away to the side, um, hope it's going to go away, like shove it somewhere out of view. But if we instead make it part of our lives and kind of learn to live around it, I think that's when it does the least damage, I feel.
I think that's a really important story. I'm so, so glad that you shared that with us, because we get into this space where we think we know better. We know what people can handle. We'll just protect them. We'll keep it all on ourselves, right? And we're doing them a service. And just like you were able to see, as young as he was, he knew that there was something that wasn't being disclosed. You know, people understand when we're withholding from them. And so I think that's, you know, really gave him more confidence that you had this faith and trust in him, that there might be things that are hard to understand, but he's part of the conversation and not, you know, there aren't secrets that he has to wonder about. Just bring all that stress off of the table. I mean, there's enough stress as it is. We don't need to also add stress into the, what don't I know? What don't they tell me? So I think that's important, because parents and family members, we do get into this space where we think we're protecting people by shielding them from what's going on.
Exactly. And, you know, I think we're also so good at making wrong assumptions. Right? I mean, I don't know. I'm just like, I'm a master at this, just making assumptions about other people, just in general. Like, what do they want? What do they know? You know, like one of the things that I assumed is that people would kind of react in a very particular way to, you know, like friends and family, but people reacted all sorts of different ways. And I realized that with some people, like they didn't know how to react, so they didn't want to say the wrong thing, they didn't want to do the wrong thing, so they kind of didn't do anything. And at the time, it really was incredibly upsetting to me, because there were some people who kind of just disappeared from my life, really at the time when I needed them the most. And this is a huge one of the huge lessons that I've learned, was I think, you know, instead of assuming that things people will do certain things, or it's, this whole explicit communication has just become such a big point for me, Susie, because what I've learned, and this is I think true, especially when I think of guys, right? But I think for everyone, I think we all work this way, is unless you specifically tell someone how you feel and what you kind of would love them to do for you and help you or support you, or like what it is that you kind of want them from them for yourself, it's probably not going to happen. You know, because like people just can't read our minds, and I think we just forget that sometimes, because we think they know you, and that automatically qualifies them to be mind readers, and it doesn't. I wish it did, though.
If we could add that to our superpowers, we could put in a request. But I think that's a really important lesson, just to not expect people to have those psychic powers, and to help everyone out, help yourself out and help them out by letting them know how they can support you. I think that's empowering all the way around.
Yeah, exactly. And also, Susie, I think when you do that, I also think it's incredibly empowering for those people around you, because if this is your close friend, if this is like a colleague or a business partner, if this is your romantic partner or family member, if they truly care about you, they're gonna love you for it, because when you explicitly tell them what's going on and how they can help you, you've really just made it so much easier for them to really be there for you and support you on your terms, right? Because like there's no guesswork. They don't have to figure out what to do. Like they just know, right?
Exactly. It makes everybody feel a little bit more capable or empowered in the situation.
Absolutely.
I'm curious too. So I'm not very familiar with the healthcare system in Australia. So I'm guessing that the medical needs were met right out the gate. This is what's happening. This is how we feel we need to treat you. How did you go about getting other support? Did you find a therapist or a counselor at that point? I mean, I'm sure mentally this was incredibly overwhelming to take on at a young age with a young family.
Well, absolutely, Susie. And I have honestly can say that I had no idea about any of that. And I think this is was for me, one of the biggest realizations was like it never occurred to me to seek any psychological support because I was like, well, this is cancer. Like this is supposed to be hard, you know. and and also I come from, from Eastern European long line of like life is supposed to be hard anyway. So just, yeah, find your best way of dealing with it, but I think this is, and I found out so much about all sorts of different support services and physical health and mental health. Actually, when I was doing the podcast, because I came across all these experts in all these different fields, and how that can make a huge difference. But I think this is true for like all of us, right? In whatever walk of life or whatever situation we're in, like oftentimes, like it never occurs to you to go and say, I'm gonna find a therapist, I'm gonna find a professional, I'm gonna get someone to help me deal with this, because sometimes you are just so stuck in the reality of, like trying to deal with whatever crisis you're in. Or for me, it was obviously going through treatment, which was really overwhelming, right? Because you have to learn this new language and all this new way of looking at things. But we get so, pulled into these, like just the challenges of daily life. Sometimes we forget to say, well, like, what's right for me? Like, what would actually help me right now? And it sounds so basic, so obvious, but I wish somebody just, tapped me over the shoulder or banged me over the head and said, hey man, you gotta do something, to get help, right?
Yes. So it was really after your own experience, as you were sharing this information and finding more resources, that you became aware of how much more there is available support wise.
Exactly. I had no idea, and maybe and this is of course specific, I guess, on different situations, because sometimes you might find out about it through all sorts of different channels, and of course that depends on the situation you're in, depends on the system, depends on all sorts of things. But yeah, I think I think at the heart of it is, this is, I guess, the decision that, I guess, a realization that I had, Susie, is that no one is more invested in your health, in your well-being, and your happiness as you are yourself. Even if you have people around you who really care for you, even if you have people who love you and support you, you gotta look out and do what's right for you and find out things that are gonna be right for yourself, that are gonna kind of support you through a difficult time, which we all face in one way or another, and just kind of be your own champion when it comes to health and happiness.
Absolutely. I'm so glad. And I love the passion that you bring all of this out with. I hope that people are just taking it in. You have to be your own champion. No one else is going to put your well-being and your happiness first, right? We have to learn how to do that for ourselves and be our own advocate and look for the tools that we need and not sell ourselves short and say, cancer is supposed to be hard. Of course, I'm struggling. Everyone struggles. We can find resources to help lift us up. I think that's really important for people to hear and to take in. So thank you for that. So since then, along your path, what's helped you to be healthier and happier as you've become aware of other resources that you can call in?
I think it's also came to when I came to a point of really being at least beyond the immediate kind of danger of, dying from cancer. When I had my first all clear, I found myself in a really weird place, Susie, because what I expected was, I'm going to get all clear. I'm going to go back to, everything's going back to normal. And on so many levels, it turned out that was not going to be the case. And I just remember distinctly, coming home after chemo, and I thought, well, I'm just really gonna enjoy this now. I can go to the toilet with my door closed. I can do all sorts of things. I'm just gonna enjoy this my time at home. And I remember, like, I made myself a fresh pot of coffee. I got the book that just I could arrive that I ordered. This next book in the kind of the series that I was reading. I thought, I'm really going to enjoy this, coming back home for a couple of days before I go back to work. And I remember just, I came out on the deck, and I wanted to go and sit down on the swing bench we've got over in the backyard. And I remember just my hand started swimming and I felt so off. Like I finally somehow made it to there. I sat down. I remember having a drink of my coffee, and I love coffee. I'm a huge coffee snob, and I had this gulp of coffee, and it was disgusting. I nearly just spat it out. It was awful. And I realized, oh God, like this is my taste buds have changed after chemo, and I was like, whoa, that's awful. And I opened up my book, and I looked at the words, and I recognized the words, but none of it kind of could fit in, and it was just like a jumble. And I was like, I put that aside. I was like, I'm a mess. I'm a mess. Like I, I have to get back into life. I gotta go back to work. I have to be there for my family. Like I'm not in any way, shape, or form to be like in a good way, mentally or physically. I put lots of weight as well because when I went through a treatment, I was on these steroids, and it made which was great because it helped me with the treatment, but it also made me eat like crazy. So I put on I put in at least 15 kilos through that time, right? It was so. I think on all levels and also I didn't know what to do with myself. Like just the like everything that I knew that made sense was kind of up in the air. I didn't know what was going to happen. So I decided that I needed to really get a hold of myself and figure out what's right for me. So I started to do things that I've never really done. Like I went to see exercise physiologist who did a program for me how to kind of get into fitness, which for me was a big deal because I've never done anything to do with my health or fitness. I started eating well. I went to see a nutritionist who actually specializes in people who had cancer. And so I started doing all sorts of things. I started reading, a ton of self-help books. I started to psychology books. I started to try to figure out like what is going to be right for me. I started, reading about mindfulness and trying all sorts of different things to figure out like what's going to work for me. And it just and I think even through trial and error, I found lots and lots of things that I feel worked for me, or if I found my way of doing them that I felt like, was maybe, an insight or something that's changed and it really gave me a completely different way of looking at things, or even simple things like journaling and finding kind of the right types of questions to ask myself so I can kind of make sense of what's going on. So I guess doing all of that has really been transformational because it helped me to find a place where I felt like I was now in control of my life. I was at least in control of my health to the extent that I could control my health, right? And over a period of time, it's really has been transformational in just getting me back to the what's called the new normal, where I feel like I am, in all honesty, at least, physically and mentally, I'm in the best place that I've ever been, even considering how I was before cancer.
I think that's so important. I love what you're saying about that. And I can't help but think of drawing a bit of an analogy. It can be a leap. I haven't had cancer, so I'm not trying to minimize what you went through, but what people have been through in this last year has been such a huge shift. And I think a lot of people are frustrated or even grieving right now because they felt like when this is in hand, we're going to go back to normal. And then discovering that just normal doesn't work anymore. It's not the same. And we're not the same because we've been through a life-changing experience, protracted over a whole year. You got to just try to digest all of yours over 9 weeks of chemotherapy, which is incredibly intense, along with just, worrying about the outcome, right? Your own personal health and how is your family going to look when this is all over. And so taking that opportunity, when you start recognizing this doesn't work, I'm not the same person. What do I look like? What works for me? And really getting to work, I think is just so admirable because perhaps that's a point at which people get psyched out. They get frustrated. They start to count the limitations, think about the things that are beyond their control. I don't have the focus. Where's my, my mental acuity? Where's my physical strength? And be frustrated on all of that instead of looking for the opportunities that you are able to find. I mean, just all of these tools that you let yourself explore and discover what works for you and what doesn't, I think is so empowering. And to hear you say you feel better, stronger, happier now than even perhaps to an extent before your diagnosis is really empowering. And I hope that brings hope to people.
Yeah, absolutely, Susie. And thank you for saying that. I really appreciate it. And I think it's so true, because whenever you go through a difficult experience, like the crazy times that we had throughout the pandemic, right? That's been such a huge shakeup for all of us. It's where it's, because when you go through these experiences, sometimes we go like things don't make sense, and like what you rightfully so pointed out, that the new normal doesn't really exist, or whatever you knew as normal. So I think it's important to kind of let yourself say, you know what, that's the case, and also I've changed. I think that's okay to say as well. If you go through, it's hard to imagine going through kind of any kind of big transition in your life and then expecting yourself to be the same person, right? Because you're not the same person you were 10 years ago, you're not the same person you were 5 years ago. And it's a natural process that we go through, and we evolve, we change. And when you go through kind of a big dramatic experience, that kind of just accelerates it. And what we need after that is a time to kind of process it, is what we need, the time to really accept, well, look, this is a huge thing that's happened, and circumstances have changed, and I've changed. But what I do now, and I think, and this is, I think, a really, a great thing that we can we can explore now as well, right? Because I think that's a big deal, right?
Yes, absolutely. And I think that the more we can pool resources, share the stories of what worked and what didn't work, just helps to lift us all up, to inspire a little hope and bring, some levity into the process that otherwise can be really overwhelming when we start counting everything that we have to give up, everything we don't get to step right back into, instead of exploring what can we grow into and what can we start to call in, start designing our life from this point forward rather than counting the losses.
Yeah, exactly. And it's such a fantastic way that you describe it, Susie, in grow into, right? It's not something that you just kind of made up on the spot because you were bored. It's something that is a natural transition, right? Natural growth. And that's really how I think about it. When we go into situations that, we're in kind of these transitions, with something's changed, something's kind of shifted in your life, is, to me, it also has to be a change in how we think about ourselves, how you experience meaning, like what is meaningful to you right now. And I think the way to do it is to kind of, instead of holding those worries, I know this is what's helped me in a big way, and focusing on all those things that could go wrong, or things that don't seem right, because there's always that, is to look, try to look outward and think about, what really helped me was going, who do I want to help and why? And I think this was a big revelation for me, because and it's even those two parts of the question, like figuring out who do I want to help, because it made me think, well, because we all go through we have our own unique experiences. And, when we think of outside of ourselves, when we think towards other people, when we think towards people who may be struggling right now, people that, might be in your family, might be in your community, might be people that, have experienced similar things to yourself. Right? We always look for, that's why we kind of, that's why we live in cities. That's why we make friends. That's why we fall in love, right? Because we have this affinity and we have a need to be with other people. And I think that's why it's so crucial to rediscover those connections, rediscover those links, and make a difference to others in whatever way that is for you. But I think that transitioning from yourself to others is such a huge release, right? Because it kind of takes away the pressure, or at least some of the pressure and the worry about what is going to happen, and how am I going to deal with this, and how am I going to be able to handle that. And instead of, again, it kind of transition your energy and your attention towards things that, again, like we touched on earlier, that you can control, but they are to do with other people. And when you can think of a person, like this could be your brother, this could be your partner, this could be kind of a group of people that you're connected with, or at least affiliated in some way, or who've gone through a similar experience. I mean, for me, it was, for example, initially when in my journey, it was people who've been through cancer. Now, I guess I feel of it, it's bigger. It's anyone who's been through struggle, and figuring out, like, who do you want to help and why, because we all go through our unique experiences, right? And it shapes who you are as a person. You have your own really unique perspective on what the world is like, and you've learned so much. Every one of us has learned so much about ourselves, about life, in a way that we can help, whether that's through just sitting down with someone and being able to listen, or whether that's through some kind of a practice, or whether that's through some kind of a project, whatever that is for you. But there are things that we can do for other people they're going to be able to help you to deal with whatever challenges that you experiences in your life, and knowing why that is important as well. Because if you feel like, well, for example, I want to help, my family by renovating the kitchen, or I want to help, other people who go through challenging times to live a happy and more fulfilled life, or whatever. Having that why that is meaningful to you, that is specific to you, and I guess your perspective and take on the world is so crucial, because that can be the driver that's what's going to keep you on track to live the life that you truly want.
Yes, I think that's beautifully put. A powerful antidote to worry is looking for ways that you can serve and support others. And getting outside of ourselves, getting outside of that endless list of things that are wrong, and showing up for other people, getting context again. Like, what are other people struggling with? There's a lot that's the same. There's a lot that unites us. There's a lot that other people have on their plate that we don't. We're blessed in ways that sometimes it's hard to see when all we're counting is our struggles. And so I love that. I hope that people really take that to heart. And, sometimes in this space, if you're really into personal development, people get this feeling, oh, I have to know my purpose and live my purpose, and my whole life has to be built around it. But, perhaps you have a job that's 9 to 5 and you go and you support at work. But what really lights you up is those little ways that you're able to show up and support others, a personal project or a mission, or aligning with a nonprofit group, and looking for ways to be of service. It doesn't have to be your life work. It doesn't have to be your career, but there are ways that you can support other people. And I think that's really rewarding in both aspects, for them and for ourselves.
Yeah, that's so true, Susie. And you know what? It's also a start of it might be a start of a journey, right? Because when you put yourself on the path to doing this one thing, maybe it starts out as something really small. Maybe it starts with, I don't know, like volunteering for someone, like for an hour a week or whatever, right? It kind of can lead you to different things. It can lead you to meet different people. It might give you ideas to do all of the things that you've never thought of before. Like I never thought that, I'm going to start a podcast. I never thought I'm going to have, now 2 books, right? All those things, all those or speaking or, or getting into coaching, like all of those things I've never really considered that were possible. And unless I've taken the first step where I had no idea what I was doing, I had no idea. Like my first podcast guest was because I knew that people were struggling with it, and I knew that I wasn't the only person who was kind of dealing with this life after cancer. So I was like, well, who do I speak to first? Who would be my first guest? Well, I guess I'll just talk to my oncologist, right? And see if he wants to go on, right? So I had no idea what I was doing. And I didn't have any huge plans. My plan was like, how do I get answers for myself? How do I kind of live a better life? And just hoping, well, maybe it helps another person. That's how it's all started. And I think that's such a huge thing that we have, especially in our culture, where we have all this kind of overnight success, Susie, like where there's so much pressure to kind of instantly, be successful in everything that you're doing. And that's just so not true, right? Like you got to start where you are.
I love it. Absolutely. I did have that in mind as you were talking. I was like, you probably couldn't have imagined with that first podcast interview with your oncologist that all of these years later, you're still at it. Your audience is growing. And now, as you say, you have books, you're coaching clients, and, always discovering more ways that you're able to serve and support. Tell us the name of your podcast so folks can look it up. We'll have it in the show notes as well.
Yeah, it's Simplify Cancer podcast. So it's you can find it or wherever you listen to podcasts, or simplifycancer.com. Yeah, that's the place.
Beautiful. I love it. I'm so grateful that you made this time and you brought this conversation. I think this is so valuable. Is there anything else you want to share with folks as we wrap up?
Yeah, I think it's just so vital, Susie, like we talked about throughout this conversation, to really be your own champion when it comes to health, when it comes to wellness, when it comes to looking out for yourself. Because what I found in life is that we have to really channel, ourselves into where we want to grow into, like you said. I think that's so crucial, because why worry about all those things that could go wrong when there is so much to make right?
Beautiful. I love it. I'm so glad you found that ability to be your own champion. Thanks for bringing that. And I hope that other people take you up on it and look for ways to be their own champion and carve a brighter future and path forward. Thank you so much, Joe. It's been a treat talking with you.
Thank you so much, Susie. Thank you so much for having me. And thank you so much for what you do in the world. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.